It's the 8th of April 2026. This is a brand new edition of Newsfirst's Primetime News, coming to you live and direct from our Newsfirst studios here in Colombo. Bringing you tonight's bulletin for the Newsfirst team, I am Jaimal Ratnayaka.
And I'm Thiruni Karunaratna. Here are your headlines for tonight.
Ceasefire announced for the Middle East. Both sides preparing to meet in Pakistan on Friday. Crude oil prices decline. Global energy supply continues to face disruptions due to damage to refineries, oil fields and ports. Renovated Fort Central bus terminal opened to the public. Audit report on coal transactions. Matter also raised for debate in Parliament.
On to tonight's top story. A temporary pause has been secured in the Middle East hostilities that have continued for 40 days, with the United States and Iran agreeing to a 2-week ceasefire. The peace talks, to be conducted with the direct mediation of Pakistan, are scheduled to take place on Friday in Islamabad. Today on Truth Social, US President Donald Trump said any country supplying Iran with military weapons will face immediate 50% tariffs with no exemptions.
US President Donald Trump yesterday afternoon warned that Iran's entire civilization would face destruction if it failed to reach an agreement with the United States or reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Washington set a deadline for Iran until 5:30 a.m. Sri Lankan time today to comply, while Iran warned that it was prepared to launch retaliatory strikes if attacked. Across the country, Iranian civilians gathered around power plants and bridges, forming human shields in a display of support for the Iranian government. Now, uncertainty loomed worldwide over what would unfold next in the Middle East. However, with around 90 minutes remaining before the expiry of the deadline issued to Iran, a post made by President Donald Trump on his Truth Social account offered a measure of reassurance to the international community. US President Donald J. Trump announced a 2-week suspension of US bombing and attack operations against Iran, describing the decision as part of a double-sided ceasefire aimed at finalizing a long-term peace agreement and ensuring stability in the Middle East. In a public statement issued early Wednesday, Trump said the move followed conversations with Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and Pakistan's Chief of Army Staff Field Marshal Azim Munir. He said the discussions included a request that the United States halt the destructive force scheduled to be deployed against Iran. Trump stated that the suspension is conditional upon the Islamic Republic of Iran agreeing to the complete, immediate and safe opening of the Strait of Hormuz, a vital global shipping route. He confirmed that he had agreed to pause military strikes for a period of 2 weeks to allow negotiations to conclude. This will be a double-sided ceasefire, Trump said, adding that the United States has already met and exceeded all military objectives. He said Washington is very far along with a definitive agreement concerning long-term peace with Iran and peace in the Middle East. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said that the country has agreed to accept the new ceasefire proposal. Iran's spiritual leader Mojtaba Khamenei has issued orders to halt all attacks. Iran has also given assurances that the Strait of Hormuz will be fully reopened to secure naval and commercial maritime navigation, a move of particular significance. Iran further agreed to implement a complete ceasefire once the 10 proposals it has put forward to establish the new truce are formally approved. Here are the 10 proposals. No new aggression against Iran, continued Iranian control over the Strait of Hormuz, acceptance of enrichment, removal of all primary sanctions, removal of all secondary sanctions, termination of all UN security resolutions, termination of all Board of Governors resolutions, payment of compensation to Iran, withdrawal of US combat forces from the region, and cessation of war on all fronts, including against the heroic Islamic resistance of Lebanon. Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, who played a direct mediating role in securing the ceasefire, confirmed the agreement, stating that under the new truce, the relevant parties have agreed to refrain from launching attacks on all countries, including Lebanon. He also confirmed that US-Iran peace talks are scheduled to be held on the 10th April in Islamabad, Pakistan. Responding to the ceasefire, Israel said it too would refrain from carrying out attacks on Iran in line with the agreement. However, Israel stressed that it would continue its attacks targeting Lebanon. Following the announcement of the ceasefire, Iranian citizens gathered in large numbers across cities, including Tehran, scenes such as these unfolding as the news spread. U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth said the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran achieved every single objective.
Iran begged for this ceasefire, and we all know it. As the President truth this morning, a big day for world peace. Iran wants it to happen. They've had enough. Operation Epic Fury was a historic and overwhelming victory on the battlefield. A capital V military victory. By any measure, Epic Fury decimated Iran's military and rendered it combat ineffective for years to come. We untied just a fraction of our strength, and Iran suffered a devastating military defeat. Together with our Israeli partners, America's military achieved every single objective, on plan, on schedule, exactly as laid out from day one. Iran's Navy is at the bottom of the sea. President Trump had the power to cripple Iran's entire economy in minutes. But he chose mercy. He spared those targets because Iran accepted the ceasefire under overwhelming pressure. The new Iranian regime understood that a deal was far better than the fate that awaited them. This new regime just happened to look at what happened to their predecessors.
Despite the ceasefire being a respite for many across the world, its future is uncertain as Israel has launched what the Israeli Defense Forces calls its biggest strikes since the start of its ground operation in Lebanon. The Israeli air raid struck central Beirut without warning, just hours after the ceasefire was announced in the United States-Israeli war with Iran. Meanwhile, Pakistani Premier Shehbaz Sharif says violations of ceasefire reported from across the conflict zone undermine the spirit of peace process. Now, taking to X, the Pakistani Premier urged all parties to exercise restraint and respect the ceasefire for 2 weeks as agreed upon so that diplomacy can take a lead role towards peaceful settlement of the conflict. Now, Lebanon's Ministry of Public Health said that dozens of people had been killed and hundreds wounded, stressing that the figures were preliminary and likely to rise as rescue workers sifted through the rubble. Israel had already claimed that the truce did not apply to its conflict with Hezbollah in Lebanon, despite mediator Pakistan saying that the agreement extended to that front as well. The Israeli military described the bombardment as the largest coordinated strike of the current war, with more than 100 Hezbollah-linked targets hit within 10 minutes in Beirut, southern Lebanon, and the eastern Bekaa Valley. The Israeli military said it had targeted missile launches, command centers, and intelligence infrastructure, and accused Hezbollah of using civilians as human shields. The Lebanese president has described what the Israeli attacks as a massacre. A final toll for the attacks has not yet been confirmed, but it is estimated that hundreds of people have been either killed or injured. Against this backdrop, a group of Western countries is urging swift and lasting peace in Iran and for all sides to adhere to the 2-week ceasefire, including in Lebanon. The statement was signed by leaders from the UK, France, Italy, Germany, Canada, Denmark, the Netherlands, Spain, the European Commission and the European Council. The leaders welcomed the 2-week ceasefire, thanking Pakistan and intermediaries for facilitating this important agreement. Let's now take a look at the world energy situation following the ceasefire between USA and Iran.
Now, how did global oil prices react? Global oil prices have fallen sharply and stock markets have jumped after the US and Iran agreed to a conditional 2-week ceasefire deal that includes the reopening of the key Strait of Hormuz waterway, and the price of benchmark Brent crude fell by about 13% to $94.80 a barrel, while US traded oil was more than 15% lower at $95.75. Now, in stock markets in Asia showed sharp rises following the announcement. Japan's Nikkei 225 gained a 5%, while the ASX 200 in Australia gained 2.7%. Iraq at the same time reopened its airspace. With the ceasefire in place, it might still feel like things are finally settling down, but is everything really back to normal? Will oil prices fall back to their previous lows? Well, here's a detailed look on that.
Despite a decline in global crude oil prices following the ceasefire announcement, prices remain above the pre-war level of around $70 per barrel. According to the Japan Energy Institute, stabilization of oil prices will take considerable time as repairs to oil supply infrastructure damaged during the conflict could take several months or even years. The institute noted that the lingering impact of attacks on key oil and energy installations across the Middle East remains a major factor preventing price stability. During the intense fighting in recent days, a number of the region's most critical oil and energy facilities came under attack. On the 5th of April, a major fire broke out at the Ruwais refinery in the United Arab Emirates, the world's largest refining complex, after debris from missiles intercepted by air defense systems fell onto the facility. In Saudi Arabia, operations at the Ras Tanura refinery, the country's largest, were temporarily suspended following a drone attack in the early days of the war. The Samref refinery in the kingdom was also targeted in a drone strike on the 19th of March. Meanwhile, in Bahrain, the Bapco refinery sustained severe damage in an attack last month, forcing a disruption to its operations. In Kuwait, drone attacks on the Min Al-Amadi refinery on the 3rd of April and the Mina Abdullah refinery on the 19th of March caused fires in several operational units. Kuwait National Petroleum Corporation headquarters was also attacked during the conflict. In Iraq, operations at the Lanaz refinery in Erbil were suspended from last month following a fire caused by a drone strike. Beyond oil refineries, several major natural gas production and processing facilities across the region also sustained damage. Iran launched missile attacks on the Ras Laffan LNG complex operated by Qatar Energy. In the UAE, operations at the Habshan gas processing facility, which is the country's largest, were temporarily halted following an attack. Iran's drone attack also damaged the Shah gas field. Israel, meanwhile, carried out an attack on Iran's largest gas field, the South Pass facility, on the 18th of March. More recently, a gas pressure regulation station in Iran's Isfahan region was also targeted in US-Israeli attacks. Economists warn that the shutdown of these gas facilities could make it increasingly difficult in the coming months for many countries across the world to secure fuel supplies required for electricity generation and industrial activity. In addition to refining and gas infrastructure, several key oil fields were also directly targeted. Multiple attacks were reported on the Majnoon oil field in southern Iraq, as well as on Saudi Arabia's Sheiba oil field in the eastern region, which produces approximately 1 million barrels of oil per day. Restoring disrupted supply chains caused by attacks on oil fields and energy infrastructure has emerged as one of the most significant challenges global powers face in the aftermath of the ceasefire. During the conflict, an attack was also reported on the vicinity of Iran's Bushehr nuclear power plant. Iranian authorities said preliminary assessments confirmed that no damage had been sustained by the plant or its operations. Now, beyond the energy sector, extensive damage was inflicted on several major aluminium and steel production facilities across the Middle East due to Iranian attacks. The Al Tawila aluminium factory at the Khalifa Port Industrial Zone in Abu Dhabi and Bahrain's Alba aluminium smelter were both damaged. In Iran, production at the Mubarakeh Steel Company was completely halted after multiple key units of the plant were destroyed in attacks. Analysts warn that the shutdown of these basic metal production facilities is likely to have a serious impact on construction and manufacturing sectors worldwide. Global trade also suffered severe disruption due to the paralysis of maritime activity in the Strait of Hormuz and attacks on major ports and export terminals across the region. Operations at Saudi Arabia's Yanbu port on the Red Sea were temporarily suspended following an Iranian attack. Drone strikes on Fujairah port, an important hub outside the Strait of Hormuz, forced repeated suspensions of operations. Damage and fires were also reported at Jebel Ali container port and the Khor Fakkan port after aerial munition debris fell on the facilities. While operations have resumed at Sohar port and the Mina Al Fahal export terminal, which were both previously closed due to drone threats, operations at the Salalah port remain suspended following an attack. In Bahrain, operations at the Khalifa bin Salman port have been halted since the 12th of March due to the ongoing conflict. Iranian media further reported that US and Israeli attacks targeted the Shahid Raji port in Bandar Abbas, located near the Strait of Hormuz. Restoring the region's port infrastructure will be critical to rebuilding the Middle Eastern economy in the post-ceasefire period. Against this backdrop, International Monetary Fund Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva issued a warning regarding the growing risks facing the global economy.
Had we not have this war, we would have seen one small upgrade of our growth projections. Instead, all roads now lead to higher prices and slower growth. What we observe is threefold. One, the impact is large. Just to compare to COVID time, in COVID time, oil supply shrank by 12%. That was both demand and supply shock. But supply shrunk. This time, oil supply has shrunk by 13%. So we have a significant impact from oil, from gas, and from the interruption of supply chains from fertilizers to helium. Second, the impact is global. Everybody around the planet feels it. Energy importers feel it a lot. Now, even energy exporters, countries in the Gulf, Iraq, they also feel the impact. And three,
because they can't get their oil to market.
Because they cannot get gas, oil. They have facilities that are being bombed. You just look at Qatar. They are stating that 17% of their gas production is going to be absent for the next 3 to 5 years because of the damage done. According to the International Energy Agency, 72 energy facilities, production, distribution, have been damaged. 1/3 of those damaged more significantly. So even if the war is to stop today, there would be lingering negative impact to the rest of the world. And three, the impact is asymmetric. And I want to stress this point, that when you are a poor, vulnerable country with no energy reserves whatsoever, with no fiscal space to protect your businesses and your people, and that hits you, then of course it is a very painful impact.
Now, amid escalating tensions over the past month between the US and Iran, politicians on both sides of the aisle have now raised the idea of invoking the 25th Amendment to the Constitution with the goal of removing Donald Trump from the office of the president. But is it that simple? Here's a look.
Simply put, the 25th Amendment exists to outline what the United States government should do in situations where the president is either killed or found to be unfit for office. Section 4 of the amendment, in particular, outlines ways the federal government can vote to remove the president if they find that he is, quote, unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, unquote. So, if such a plan were to be put in motion, where would it start? The short answer is with the Vice President. Now, if Vice President J.D. Vance were to get a majority of the principal officers of the executive departments to declare in writing that President Trump is unfit for office, Vance would immediately assume the position. If Trump were to try and fail to challenge the majority decision by Vance and the executive officers, Vance would immediately assume the position and the fate of the executive branch would be in the hands of Congress. Dozens of congressional Democrats called for President Donald Trump to be removed from office after he used extreme rhetoric against Iran that included threatening to wipe out a whole civilization. More than 70 lawmakers, including a handful of senators, said in separate social media posts that Trump's cabinet needs to invoke the 25th Amendment to the Constitution and declare him unfit to serve, or Congress should impeach and convict him, or both. Trump's rhetoric sparked outrage from Democrats as well as criticism from some Republicans, who said carrying out such threats would amount to war crimes. Less than 90 minutes before the 8 p.m. Eastern Time deadline, Trump said that he was suspending U.S. attacks on Iran for 2 weeks and that the countries were now engaged in a double-sided ceasefire. Still, many of the Democrats who had called for his removal earlier in the day doubled down after Trump's ceasefire announcement, maintaining that he should no longer hold office.
Taking a look back at news from here at home, Sri Lanka and other nations bordering the Indian Ocean must stand by the region themselves or risk outside powers stepping in to shape its future. This was a statement made by retired Rear Admiral Y.N. Jayaratne, former chief hydrographer of Sri Lanka, at a panel discussion held in Colombo. Jayaratne also stressed that national interest must now guide decisive and proactive statecraft with regard to the Sea of Sri Lanka.
Is Iran is a threat to India? Is Iran is a threat to Sri Lanka? Is Iran is a threat to Pakistan? And similarly, we take it a little bit, is America, USA is a threat to India? Is USA is a threat to Sri Lanka? So, as you fill in this matrix in your mind, you will see that certain things are very indicated. So, who should be standing by for Indian Ocean? It is the Indian Ocean itself. It is us, the countries that are in the Indian Ocean. Why? If we don't stand by for it, someone else will. So when the Iris Dana completed their exercise in Vizag, in the Bay of Bengal and coming down, all of our NDA tools were picking up, tracking these ships. So didn't it occur to anyone that these two stand as a target? The war broke out in 28th of February. So it's an interpolation and interpretation of the facts and figures and realities on the ground. When you failed in that, it failed on our statecraft. So these are interconnected affairs. Maritime affairs are no longer standalone affairs. So from that, what the role we in Sri Lanka want to play? Are we politically ready to play that role? Are we ready to take that lead in political arenas? It's a question that you can ask yourself. I will not have answers for that. But we need to be very bold. We need to be very proactive. Because the warfare is changing, the political culture is changing, the global players are changing, and the global influence is changing. Amid these things, how best that we shape ourselves as an island state in the Indian Ocean to face this future? I would say putting our national interest in the forefront will be the best choice right now. When you put your national interest in the front, it is very easy to make decisions.
A panel discussion titled Waves of Rivalry, Can the Indian Ocean Stay a Peace Zone? Was held in Colombo. The event was organized by the Research Division of the Bandaranaike Center for International Studies.
Opposition leader Sajid Premadasa today made several statements in Parliament, citing different figures regarding proposed electricity tariff revisions.
The electricity bill was increased by 11% in April. Now you are proposing to raise it by 53% in May. Do you even realize that? You are speaking without knowing the facts. A 53% increase is being planned for May. The amount the government expects to earn through this and what it will actually cost is the money being extracted from consumers 41.5 billion rupees. Today, this government is giving manure to the innocent people of this country. I will take just 15 seconds. In my speech, I presented certain figures that require correction because I may have misstated them slightly. In reality, the government expects that after increasing the electricity tariff by 11% in April, within the April-June calculation period, the figure of 53% refers to the cost of generation. However, the price increase being implemented is not 53%, but 30%. I felt it was my responsibility to correct this.
What has happened to the opposition leader? Here's the government's response.
This is the reality. You can bring different figures and say different falsehoods. You can say the people are being fed manure, but the people are not ready to drink it. Those who tried to feed the people manure are now sitting in the opposition. Some parties have been rejected. Some have been thrown into the political dustbin. After deceiving the people for years, thinking they were fools, the people responded by electing 159 MPs from the National People's Power. Not because they were misled, but because they have a conscience and an understanding of our commitment.
Those entangled in corruption, murder and theft and lies to the entire country now come here to lecture us about corruption and deception. Don't make jokes. Didn't these attacks happen? Under whose government did they occur? Where was Sajid Premadasa when the attacks took place? During his period of governance, the Easter attacks happened. Opposition leader Sajid Premadasa was about to place his hand of the book that was supposedly penned by the faction accused of the attacks. Yes, he is the AI opposition leader. This is the situation. This is the deception. We need to understand to face the reality. This is a massive relief package. Electricity pricing, fuel pricing, food pricing. In times of crisis, a government has a responsibility to protect the people. That is exactly what we are doing. When the Easter attacks occurred and during COVID-19, there was no government to protect the people. Today there is. We act as a responsible government and we regret that there is no responsible opposition to match it.
Who is most suitable to lead opposition politics?
The citizens of the Jana Aragale organization today stated that the country needs an opposition leader who understands grassroots politics.
A country needs an opposition leader who understands the politics on the ground. Such a leader must be present at the grassroots level. Only then can the real problems faced by the people be understood. The opposition has failed to do this. At present, there is no proper opposition leader in this country. The opposition lacks backbone. Standing with the people and on their behalf, we as the citizens of the Jana Aragale are prepared to take on responsibilities that the opposition leader of this country has failed to fulfill.
Former President Gotabaya Rajapaksa's then Private Secretary Sugishwara Bandara today arrived outside the main headquarters of the Janata Vimukti Peramuna carrying 2 gas cylinders and staged a protest claiming that cooking gas was unavailable.
Sugishwara Bandara, who previously served as former President Gotabaya Rajapaksa's private secretary, arrived at the JVP headquarters accompanied by a Buddhist monk and 2 others and stated that he wished to meet the party's general secretary.
අපි එයාටත් ගෑස් එකක් දීලා එයා ගාව තියනවා නම් අපිත් ගෑස් ටිකක් අරගෙන යන්න ඉතින් අපේ නායක හාමුදුරුවොත් එක්ක මේ වඩින්නේ නායක හාමුදුරුවෝ ලේකම්තුමා වැහැ දකින්න මේ ගෑස් එක කාටද මේ ටිල්ලින් සිල්ලා මහත්තයාට කලින් ටිල්ලින් සිල්ලා සහෝදරයා දැන් ටිල්ලින් හාමුට දෙන්න ආවේ මොකද ජනතාවට නැති කිසි දෙයක් හාමුලාට එපානේ ඉතින් ගෑස් නැහැ.
Following a brief verbal exchange lasting several minutes with security personnel and officials attached to the JVP headquarters, the group later dispersed. Who is this individual protesting with 2 gas cylinders, a monk and 2 others claiming there is no gas? This is Sugishwara Bandara. He served as the private secretary to Gotabaya Rajapaksa during his tenure as president. At a time when the public suffered for days in queues without cooking gas at any price and without fuel, and when several people lost their lives while waiting in those queues, Sugishwara Bandara held the position of private secretary to President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. When chemical fertilizer was banned, leaving farmers across the country without direction, and when Sri Lanka paid $6.9 million without even receiving a fertilizer shipment from China, Sugishwara Bandara remained in that position. When experts repeatedly urged the country to seek assistance from the International Monetary Fund, and those warnings were ignored until the country reached a stage where debt repayments became impossible, Sugishwara Bandara continued to hold office. There are countless more instances that can be recalled. Even if Sugishwara Bandara has forgotten them, the people of this country have not. When citizens ultimately gathered at Goldface Green and sent Gotabaya Rajapaksa home, Sugishwara Bandara was still serving as his private secretary. Today, people who were rejected by the public and who breached the people's mandate appear to have woken up from sleep to stage protests of this nature. The question remains, for what purpose? The people, however, remain fully aware.
The Auditor General's report on coal transactions sparked several rounds of heated discussion in Parliament today.
Even if the coal was not tasted when it was purchased, it is clear that it was thoroughly consumed by the time the coal shipment arrived. It is evident that it was consumed very well. The company that supplied the coal was not registered, not properly registered at all. The laboratory report was incorrect. It was a fraudulent report. A lab report from an unregistered laboratory linked to an unregistered company was used. What did this sorrowful and unfortunate government do to push the company into bankruptcy? The burden and suffering were ultimately placed on the people of this country. When cartels are dismantled, it is the cartel leaders and the fraudulent groups who benefited from them that feel the pain. That is exactly what is happening now. Those who were given contracts without any tender process, without following procurement procedures, through cabinet papers issued to their own allies, are the ones now crying out in distress. When it was said that this was a lizard government, the message should have been understood. But even wrapped in shawls, they do not have the intelligence of a lizard's brain. That is why they cannot understand it. Even yesterday it was repeated that decisions are not made by tasting coal. What is actually done is checking at the loading port, checking at the discharge port, and then checking at the power plant. But when we explain this, all they hear is the phrase, tasting coal. That is why I say, despite wearing shawls, they lack even a lizard's level of intelligence. In a democracy, the Auditor General has now presented an independent report highlighting serious flaws in the process that took place. Until now, it was repeatedly claimed that this procurement was proper. However, the Auditor General states that the company known as Trident Champ was allowed to participate in the tender despite not being registered. That is wrong. Furthermore, the company selected for the second emergency procurement did not meet the required qualifications. That too is wrong. These are not our claims. These are the findings of the Auditor General. Full responsibility for this process lies with the minister who submitted recommendations to the cabinet and presented cabinet papers on the matter. I ask you to respond. Whether you resign or not is another matter. But when the Auditor General clearly states in his report that Terranjot Resources Private Limited has not fulfilled the required qualifications, and when the government tabled this report in Parliament yesterday, the country deserves answers. Will this company continue to supply coal to Sri Lanka in the future or not? If not, what steps will be taken? Regardless of whether you are in office or not, there is an energy crisis in this country. I ask you to answer, what is the future of the agreement with Terranjot? What is the government's policy on emergency procurements under these circumstances? If you are unable to respond, then let any other responsible minister of this government respond.
Newsfirst with the people.
The fully renovated Peta Central Bus Terminal was officially opened to the public this morning. Minister of Transport, Highways and Urban Development, Bimal Ratnayaka, graced the event, and the terminal underwent renovations for the first time in almost 60 years.
The project to renovate the Peta Central Bus Terminal, launched on 15th of September 2025 and carried out under the Clean Sri Lanka initiative, was completed ahead of schedule at a cost of 424 million rupees. This was made possible through a continuous 24-hour operation with the technical and labour contribution of the Sri Lanka Air Force. The inauguration was attended by Minister of Transport and Highways Bimal Ratnayaka, Deputy Minister of Urban Development Eranga Gunasekara, Colombo Mayor Roy Kelly Balthasar and other officials. The modernised terminal is equipped with a range of upgraded facilities to serve approximately 75,000 daily passengers and nearly 2,000 buses. The ground floor is designated for bus operations, while the first floor provides air-conditioned rest areas for drivers and conductors, along with shops and modern sanitary facilities. Passenger information is delivered in real time via digital display screens and a modern information system.
Move forward, Sri Lanka.
The Committee on Public Finance has hit the brakes on a new set of tax concessions, warning that Sri Lanka's push for a strategic economy is being stifled by archaic laws. Its chairman, Dr. Harsha De Silva, refused to approve the first regulations under the amended Strategic Development Projects Act, slamming the Treasury for policies that favour building hotels over high-tech manufacturing.
The Treasury's Department of Fiscal Policy presented a new rules-based framework replacing the era of ministerial discretion. However, the committee was quick to point out a fundamental bias. Under the current proposal, a tourism project receives a 6-year tax holiday, while a manufacturing project of the same value is restricted to 5 years.
Manufacturing has a bias against manufacturing. I want to know why. Because if your infrastructure, utilities, tourism or leisure, and you invest let's say you're 60 million, you get 6 years of tax holidays.
And manufacturing is 5.
Manufacturing is 5. Why is that? Agriculture is also 5. Why you biasing against manufacturing? Because manufacturing can't go to Port City. Manufacturing has to go outside Port City, because Port City is a special economic zone for services. And the manufacturing can only come under BOI. So in that case, why are you discriminating against manufacturing?
I mean, on the chair, it starts with 5 years, but still you can go to 5, 8 and 10 years.
No, it starts with 6 years if you put up a tourism or leisure business.
Yeah, for category A investments, it starts with 6 years.
So why not for manufacturing? It's the same amount.
Perhaps BOI can comment on this.
Can BOI explain the rationale for
Please.
Because when you say strategic, we need to prioritize some areas, so we need to support certain areas.
I mean, we are talking about manufacturing economy. If you want a manufacturing economy, නිෂ්පාදන ආර්ථිකයක් අවශ්‍ය නම්, ඒ නිෂ්පාදන ආර්ථිකයක් හදන්න කර්මාන්තයක් කරනකොට ඒකට දෙන බදු නිසාද අවුරුදු 5කුත්, හෝටලයක් හදනවා නම් ඒකට බදු නිසාද අවුරුදු 6කුත් දෙන්නේ. මොකද ඔයගොල්ලෝගේ ලොජික් එක?
Who's on BOI? BOI කවුරුද? Just one clarification. Yeah. These tax holidays including the first year or after operations?
The CIT exemption.
No, the income tax.
That will be after commercial operations.
After commercial. Yeah. So after you build, and after do we give a build timeline?
Yes, there's a project implementation period.
And after that you get 6 years.
Yeah, but unlike in Port City where the project implementation period is specifically given, here it's up to the BOI. Their certificate of completion, that is sufficient.
From there onwards you get the exception.
Yes.
The committee argued that the Treasury is stuck in the past, measuring success by the number of labourers on a factory floor rather than the complexity or technological value of the output.
Yes, we go back to the question. ඇයි මේ වෙනස? මොකක්ද ඔයගොල්ලන්ගේ ලොජික් එක මැනුෆැක්චරින් වලට අවුරුදු 5ක් ටැක්ස් නිදහස දෙන්නත් සේවා වලට අවුරුදු 6කට නිදහස බදු නිදහසක් දෙන්නත් අපිට දැනගන්න ඕනේ ලොජික් එක මොකක්ද කියලා. එකම ප්‍රමාණය තමයි ආයෝජනය කරන්නේ. එකම මේ ප්‍රමාණය තමයි ආයෝජනය කරන්නේ. අනිත් එක මැනුෆැක්චරින් වලින් 250ක් හයර් කරේ නැත්නම් පුද්ගලයෝ මොකක්වත් හම්බ වෙන්නේ නැහැ. Services නම් 100ක් හයර් කරත් අවුරුදු 6ක් ලැබෙනවා.
The 250, the local job creation difference, it's I think from our discussions with BOI, our understanding was that manufacturing is a more labor-intensive industry.
Twice and a half?
Of course, this is a minimum local job creation throughout the project period. We have not specified a particular project period. So on that, at least I think it's definitely attainable.
The problem there is that manufacturing can come in high-tech also, like microchips and stuff, right? So their investment will be high, but they will never create 250 jobs.
Lot of robotics and all that.
The world is moving into more automated industries, even in manufacturing. So the output will be manufacturing categorized, but you won't create such number of labor going forward. So having a higher criteria for manufacturing is little unfair per se.
මෙහෙමයි අපි මේක තීරණයක් ගත්තනේ නියෝජනයකතුමා ඔබතුමාලා මේක නැවත සල්කඩ මාලා අපිට ගේන්න මම හිතන්නේ කමිටුවේ අදහස් ඔබතුමාට පැහැදිලි කාරණා දෙකක් තියෙනවා මේ අපි දැන් කතා කරපු කාරණාව සහ මේ පෝර්ට් සිටි කමිෂන් එකේ දෙන ඒවයි මෙව්වයි අතරත් වෙනසක් තියෙනවා. එහෙම වුණාම ඉන්වෙස්ටර් කෙනෙක්ට මම හිතන්නේ ක්ලැරිටි එක මදිකමක් වාගේ අපිට හැංගෙනවා. So why don't you take a look at it? You have time now, and we'll come back.
When floodwaters rise, a single boat can become the line between life and death. In a major step towards strengthening Sri Lanka's disaster response capacity, the Gammadda movement today launched 2 state-of-the-art search and rescue boats powered by high-performance engines, enabling swift deployment in floods.
The 2 inflatable rescue boats, or IRBs, which meet all international search and rescue standards, will be operated through a groundbreaking partnership with Sri Lanka Life Saving. The 2 IRBs, both manufactured in Sri Lanka, were ceremonially unveiled by the chairman of CMG, Sirasa Mahendran. The IRBs, provided with the support of Australia's Minderoo Foundation, are designated for deployment in emergency disaster situations by Gammadda in close collaboration with the Sri Lanka Life Saving Association. They will be used for search and rescue operations as well as the rapid delivery of relief to affected communities. The IRBs have been brought into service under Gammadda search and rescue operations, strengthening efforts to save lives during times of emergency and natural disaster.
Since 1947, the organization formed. This is the first time that we received this kind of 2 rescue plus service boats. Actually, this is kind of a continuation of the partnership of Gammadda organization. We started work since 2016 as a partner organization with Gammadda. So this is a kind of a turning point, because the previously we were together and we did so much of community work and we saved hundreds of lives. But with these boats we can do both rescue and service in any kind of a disaster related to flood.
The government, the movement, will be deploying 2 rescue boats, inflatable rescue boats, to serve communities across Sri Lanka together with the Sri Lanka Life Saving Association. One of the things that we noticed, particularly when Ditwa hit us in November and December, was the abject lack of boats or rescue boats in order to reach the communities that needed saving, and then beyond that, that also needed to be to receive relief items. And so we thought that we must invest in rescue boats, because we believe that any number of these boats would eventually lead in the saving of lives. We're very thankful for the Minderoo Foundation in Australia for supporting us make this dream come true. And over and above that, it's also a proud moment, because this equipment, these 2 boats, as well as the life-saving equipment, everything has been manufactured right here in Sri Lanka, made in Sri Lanka. And so we'll be proud to serve communities across Sri Lanka in equipment that's made in Sri Lanka as well.
What is the plan to rebuild Sri Lanka cricket, which has steadily declined into a crisis over the past decade? When will those in authority fulfill their responsibility to address this deterioration? As many countries take decisive action to reform and protect cricket within their borders, the question many continue to ask is why Sri Lanka still chooses to wait.
Serious allegations of corruption and irregularities emerged during the Bangladesh Cricket Board elections held on the 6th October 2025. Former Bangladesh national captain Tamim Iqbal contested the election but later withdrew his nomination, claiming that Aminul Islam, who was subsequently elected as chairman, had interfered in the electoral process. Tamim Iqbal also alleged that the nomination acceptance period had been extended on 2 occasions, raising further concerns over the legality of the process. Amid these developments, one of Bangladesh's leading cricket clubs, the Dhaka Sporting Club, boycotted the Dhaka League tournament, stating that the election was conducted unlawfully. With allegations of corruption surfacing from multiple quarters, the Bangladesh government appointed a 5-member inquiry committee to investigate the matter. At the time, Bangladesh's Sports Minister Aminul Haq stated that once the investigation was completed, within a 15-day period, the findings would be discussed with international cricket authorities before deciding on the next steps. The inquiry committee, chaired by former Justice A.K.M. Azaduzzaman, submitted its report last Sunday. The report revealed evidence of fraud, bias and coercive practices during the 2025 Bangladesh Cricket Board elections. It further stated that officials of both the Bangladesh Cricket Board and the Ministry of Sports were involved in the election irregularities. Mohammad Aminul Ahsan, director of the Bangladesh National Sports Council, said that confirmation the election was neither free, fair nor transparent constituted sufficient grounds to dissolve the Bangladesh Cricket Board under the chairmanship of Aminul Islam. Accordingly, the Bangladesh government yesterday dissolved the board of directors of the Bangladesh Cricket Board and appointed an 11-member interim committee headed by former captain Tamim Iqbal to oversee its administration. In contrast, Sri Lanka's cricket has continued to decline steadily for more than a decade, while stakeholders who care deeply about the game have long awaited decisive action against the administration responsible for its downfall. In recent days, civil activists committed to the protection of cricket have submitted complaints to the Commission to investigate allegations of bribery or corruption, along with audit reports detailing corruption and irregularities allegedly carried out by powerful groups within the sport. Their objective, they say, is to contribute in whatever way possible to safeguard the future of cricket in Sri Lanka. While the Bangladesh government has already acted on corruption allegations linked to its cricket administration and taken initial steps to steer the sport back onto the right path, the question remains, should Sri Lanka cricket not also rescue its cricket from this abyss and guide it back onto a proper and credible course?
In some breaking news now, Iran's semi-official Fars news agency reports that Iran has halted the passage of oil tankers through the Strait of Hormuz following Israel's latest attacks on Lebanon. The news agency, quoting a senior Iranian official, said that Tehran will punish the Zionist regime in response to the onslaught against Lebanon and the violation of the ceasefire terms. Stay tuned to Newsfirst digital platforms as we bring to you the very latest in this regard. On to more local news now. AmCham Sri Lanka hosted the forum highlighting Gen Z's impact on corporate life.
The American Chamber of Commerce in Sri Lanka hosted a leadership program titled Gen Z Means Business, Rethinking Leadership, Communication and Corporate Culture in Colombo yesterday. The forum brought together corporate leaders and young professionals to discuss how Generation Z is reshaping workplace expectations, leadership and communication.
Get your youngsters to come and teach you, like technology. That breaks the barriers. As much as you mentor them, let them come and mentor you. Ask for volunteers. There are dime a dozen projects inside organizations that doesn't require people like me to lead. Get youngsters to lead them. Give them the opportunity and the exposure fast. Ask for volunteers, young ones, and give them exposure. If you do these 3 things, chances are youngsters will stay with you and enjoy the ride. By the way, it's really important that they enjoy the ride. No one stays in a boring organization. If you really want to change this, you need to start ultimately by changing yourself. You might not be able to change company policy, but you can change yourself as a leader and ensure that you demonstrate to the people who are working for you that we are capable of it. And we are. All of us are capable of change. The question is, do you want to? If you don't, I want to leave you with this thought. In the next 5 years to 10 years, the Gen Zs are not going to only be 50% of the workforce. They're going to be 50% of your marketplace.
Discussions focused on bridging generational gaps, fostering effective communication and creating inclusive corporate cultures, offering practical insights for both employers and young professionals navigating today's workplaces.
And that's a wrap of Primetime News for tonight.
Thank you for joining us.
Good night.